So I thought it would be good to start by hearing about what motivated you to start Film and Furniture, kind of where the idea for that came and how you all got started.
Yeah, well, I think what we've always tried to do is shine, a light on an industry that quite often, I think they're unsung heroes, really, the production designers and set decorators of films. In the Oscars or in major awards, it's very much about the direction and, all the rest of it and the actors. But so very rarely, normally at the end, it's a quick sort of edit into, the production design and the set decorator. So we like to shine a light on those details, but specifically about the furniture and the decor, whether that's an old classic movie or a contemporary film. So if you see a gorgeous chair in a film or an amazing carpet or even, an interesting piece of glass or barware, then, we're interested in, we'll tell you, what it says about the characters, why was it chosen, for that particular scene, or hidden messages, encapsulated within those objects, but then also where you can buy that item for your own home. So I discovered, I set this up as an elaborate blog, Film and Furniture. It's my own personal obsession, but then I quickly realized that there were hundreds of thousands of people all around the world who have shared the same addiction for those sort of details. So yeah, and I think I personally literally lose the plot when I'm watching a film, so sometimes I forget the storyline and I'm kind of focused on those details. But it all started really with The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Wow. So I was revisiting it after not seeing it for several years. And the scene where Danny's on his tricycle cycling down the corridors, investigating room 237. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking the hexagonal carpet, the orange, black and red carpet is so iconic. It's so incredibly well known. And I started to research it because, knowing Kubrick, that's obviously really fastidious about the details and all the hidden messages. And, I wanted to really understand, why it was chosen and who designed it. And I very quickly realized that even though it's incredibly iconic and it's been parodied in so many films, from Toy Story to the sci-fi Passengers to, all sorts of weird and wonderful films, but no one really talked about who designed it. So I did a lot of research. I spoke to the Kubrick archive in London. We did lots of looking through the production notes of the film, but no one really mentioned the carpet. So to cut a long story short, I eventually discovered that it was designed by the legendary interior designer, David Hicks. And we now produce for the public the officially licensed version of this carpet. So the journeys that we've been on with Film and Furniture has been really fascinating, but I think it was the Hicks hexagon in The Shining that kicked it all off. But then we've gone a lot deeper and down many rabbit holes since.
I wonder, that's so fascinating. I wonder if you can say a little bit about the distinction between production design and set decoration, because that was a question that I had in looking at your site, is understanding whether the interest of Film and Furniture was about production design overall, or whether you had kind of like a sub specialty within set decoration, which does not encompass all of production design.
Yeah, well, I think we're generally interested in production design, which is the entire look of the movie, the whole atmosphere that's created. So production design, we speak to many production designers and set decorators, some of the best in the business, and we get those kind of behind the scenes details. But I think so the overall production design is absolutely of interest to us and obviously to many others. But for us personally, it's kind of the details of the set decoration that would be, the choice of, the exact glass or the exact table, or the exact cutlery on a table, all those kind of details that help build up the scene. So the production designer has seen the overview, and then the set decorator works very closely with the production designer to create those details. So the overview and the details are kind of what drives us, but it's the kind of the details that we're slightly more obsessive about.
Yeah, I really appreciate that about Film and Furniture, because it's there are various places where you can go to sort of understand the vision of a production designer, because that's such an important role in a film, is like translating the script into the visual world that encompasses everything. But those details, those small details, like you mentioned, the carpet and the shining and all of that is, the details of who designed that carpet is probably something that's even beyond the knowledge of the production designer, right? He or she sort of farms out those decisions and then looks at something and approves it, but really drilling down into, who made those different elements, because not everything is made for a film, they're sourced, et cetera, is really, really fascinating. And I think to me, that is something really wonderful that your site, that your company kind of contributes to that ecology of film information and film fandom, in a sense.
Yeah, well, I think, thank you for those lovely comments. So, I mean, there are very few resources for this kind of information. And I think film fans, they want to, if they love a film, they want to know as much about it. So they want to read about it. They want to understand, the details. And because there are so many hidden messages, it can get quite seriously geeky as well. Whether it's a certain style of sofa or, a painting on the wall, and, even mainstream schlocky films. We're not just talking about, art house classics here, but even mainstream films, the details and the effort that goes into choosing something that might only be seen for a split second, but all those semiotics build up in our mind to kind of create the overall picture. But quite often it's those details that go on to, I think, have iconic status, like the shining carpet, or, Wes Anderson movie. There's lots of objects in Wes Anderson movies that if you just saw the object on its own, you would instantly know it was from, the Grand Budapest Hotel or something like that, the little cake box, or all those, things that build up the semiotics and the iconicism of movies. They become symbols to represent the movies. But I think also it's a really interesting source for design inspiration. So, if you're looking to, redesign your home, or for interior designers, there's lots of professional interior designers that visit film and furniture as well to kind of get general design inspiration for ideas, or for different styles or specific objects. But then I was thinking about it just before I knew that we were going to be talking today, and I was thinking, I guess in a way it's about identity, really, and that the way that material culture builds up, it gives us the signifiers for people's identities. And I think that's why people are interested in the details of film, because, and also, if you own a glass from Blade Runner, where Deckard drinks his sip of whiskey in Blade Runner, or I've got here the cutlery from 2001 designed by Arne Jacobsen. So if you have a dinner party and you serve dinner with these, you're almost kind of saying, I know this film, I'm in this club. So it's an expression of your identity and your personality.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that's definitely something I was interested in talking to you about, because it's not just that your site records all of that information and provides those insights. It's sort of a portal for fans to be able to participate in that. And I guess I was just curious about what you think about that. Like what is it that makes people want to like sort of bring those elements into their lives? What is it about that relationship that you think is so compelling to people?
Yeah, well, I think it's about getting to know the film better. It's, in the same way that if you really love a piece of music, you want to perhaps know who produced it, you want to know any of the samples that were in the music or what influenced it. You want to kind of dig deeper in order to grow a better understanding about something that you're interested in. I think it's kind of delving deeper in that sort of investigation, whether it's in a very lighthearted way or in a very sort of studious way, that is a connection to something, and it's a connection to something that you love. So, I mean, in a very sort of surface way, it's just about, oh, I know that, I get that, and also in a showy offy way, it's kind of like, I know something that perhaps you don't, there's a little bit of that in it as well. But I think, in a very deep way, it's about sort of a connection to something you love and want to know more about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting to us at MoMI, is that relationship between audiences and the stories and the characters that they engage with on screen, the lines between the worlds that they see on the screen and their own lived experience are oftentimes very, very blurry, very porous. And it's entities like film and furniture that are giving people that are making those kinds of relationships available, which I think is really, really interesting. And, movie fans and TV fans have always been super active in terms of responding. But sort of more and more those lines are so porous. I think that's super interesting. I'm wondering if you have any stories to share about fans that have like recreated are there people that that have been clients of yours that have like recreated parts of their homes to look like movie sets? Are there any great stories that you have about things like that?
I think, I've read about and I've seen a lot of people who've gone, completely over the top with their devotion to certain films. But I think a lot of I've met so many interesting and fascinating people, especially who've bought the hexagon carpet. So people send me photos of their home cinemas. We've just carpeted one in Brooklyn, actually, a huge basement in Brooklyn. They sent me the photos yesterday, actually. And everything else in this space is very beautiful and very discerning. So rather than kind of like recreating, it's almost like a very grand, expensive nod to their love of film, as opposed to kind of filling it with bits and bobs to recreate, an entire scene from Star Wars or, you know what I mean? So that, of course, there are many people out there who've created it, but I think this sort of film and furniture kind of people who come to film and furniture maybe just want a little hint of something.
Sure. I wanted to get to the topic of that iconic furniture from 2001, which you were, speaking of the chair that you were gracious enough to lend to MoMI's exhibition. I'm curious about that piece in general and what the history of it was, how you came to have that, kind of what the inspiration was and why you think it's particularly iconic.
Yeah, well, I think 2001: A Space Odyssey is such an incredible film because it defined a vision of the future that we can't escape even now. It was released in 1968 and here we are in 2021, where if you think about the future, if someone mentions the future, I think a lot of us who saw that film or when we were teenagers or later on in life, you can't escape that vision of living in space in a super shiny high white environment with maybe pops of color. And I think that's been sort of consciously or subconsciously parodied in so many films. Any film you see in space, you can often see references to 2001 set design and the production design and the entire vision, but also in real life as well. I think with my other hat on, I run a design and branding agency, and we were working with Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic label many years ago. And we were all sitting around discussing, the design of websites and marketing materials to encourage people to buy tickets to go into space. And I realized in this meeting that everyone was subconsciously referring to 2001 in their mind. So the details of typefaces, Euro-style typefaces, all these kind of things that are late 60s references to the future are completely encapsulated in 2001. So I think with the Djinn chairs, the curvy red or pink, I'll come on to that in a minute, what color are they really, chairs, and the sofas that feature in Space Station 5, which is, obviously the super white room, which I know that you referenced in the design of the new MoMI museum. These beautiful high white spaces, and then you get these incredible pops of color from the Djinn chairs, which are these super, futuristic 60s versions of the future, these beautiful curvaceous chairs. And I managed to find someone in the UK that the original producer of those chairs went bust, I think, in the 70s or 80s, and I found someone that had bought most of the stock, so that we're able to offer those to the public, to have them, and as soon as I realized that, when the new versions of the new mastered new 4D versions of 2001 came out, I realized that the chairs were looking slightly different in color. So I did a lot of research in that, and got to speak to quite a few experts, and Katerina Kubrick herself remembers that they were more kind of pink, more sort of fuchsia, and maybe it was the grading of the film or the way the lighting made them look red, but everyone remembers these as red chairs. But I decided to have one covered in the magenta pink color, and in different lighting, as you probably noticed in the museum where you have it on display. In certain lights it probably looks more red and more pink. So yeah, that was another very dark rabbit hole I ended up going down for many, many, many days.
Is there a definitive answer about whether they were, what color they actually were on the set?
Well, none of the original chairs exist apart from Katerina Kubrick, who says that she had one in her own home. She remembers it when she was a kid. And she said it was more fuchsia than red. And I think that's, from as much from the horse's mouth as one can get. But also, Warner Brothers sent me a photo of the prop store, which is unbelievable, of all the chairs from all the different scenes, from the conference scene where Floyd is addressing everyone around the table on those blue chairs, to they're all like stacked up in neat little rows, and they definitely look magenta in that particular shot. But the shot might, the photo might have faded, and red has a tendency in different lights to look different in different colors. It's that sort of spectrum. But yeah, but I think that is in many ways the beauty of 2001 really, is that it tells us as much as it doesn't tell us.
But there are mysteries, even with the set decoration, there are mysteries.
Yeah, and I think it's those kind of gaps. It's where a film doesn't tell us everything, that it makes us lean in. And all these years later, still raging debates. You look on any Stanley Kubrick Facebook page, and there are raging debates about the tiniest details. And I think that is the legacy of the film, really, is that it leaves so much into interpretation, and everyone feels that they've interpreted it better than anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just the fact that we're still sort of talking about this, and what that there are fan pages out there and reams that have been written about this, particularly about 2001, but really just movie sets in general just really speaks to how significant these things are, not just for film history, but in people's everyday life. It's really really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights and information with us. And we're thrilled to have one of those chairs on loan from Film and Furniture at MoMI for the duration of Envisioning 2001 Stanley Kubrick Space Odyssey. So thanks again so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. Good luck with the rest of the exhibition. And I'm so sorry I couldn't make it over. I'm so sad.